Hi, welcome to the Pursuit of Truth. Just continuing on from the last podcast about gcmaf. Both Sandy and Des from Sheeps and Neeps put some comments which made me think a little bit more about the subject. Sandy was detailing her, you can see it under the video, the last video on YouTube, or on YouTube, Chundal Poems. If you're listening to this on a casting thing. And she detailed her incident with mhra. I always forget the acronym for them. Lighting that there are lots of things that are approved that are not good still and have a lot of complications to them, and I guess bring into question the godship or the validity of that organisation. I'm not going to say their name wrong more than once. And then Des is also talking about why should people not be able to take whatever they want to take, and where did we get all this, when we go and get stuff from and all that, and his comments there as well. And I understood then from I think, because what I was trying to say, and I wasn't trying to knock David Noakes and I wasn't trying to knock gcmaf. I don't have the clinical training to really talk about it, to be honest. This is just my view. My concern was that anyone that can make a medicine and give it to other people, and it could be, not doing what it claims to be doing. And I think we all know that does exist, and there are cases where that's been found. Now, I know also that to just believe in, the NHS or the medical board who makes all these decisions and decides what can be licensed and what not is under question, because we've been lied to about so many things. Like, I read that story about Primados. I'm sure they were the organisation that gave that the green light, said that was great. The vaginal mesh scandal, there's been lots of them recently, and so they're not. They are fallible as well. And of course, if they do have links to pharmaceutical companies, and and we know ministers may have links as well, there may be an incentive to stop this gcmaf because they don't want their chemotherapy and radiotherapy, which has a very low success rate anyway, to be disappearing with something that actually does cure or has a better success rate. I was listening on YouTube because I was trying to find clinical studies or trials, because there are mentions of them, but some of them have been retracted. I know the Cancer Research UK talked about gcmaf, but not in a very positive way. They were talking about other research. I mean, the thing I don't understand is all this money that has been given to cancer research and all these different organisations. Why aren't they conducting their own clinical trials? What are they doing with all that money? If someone's coming out there, now everyone's talking about it now because of David Noakes, and maybe this is a good thing in the sense that he's made this claim: gcmaf, it helps with cancer, with HIV, with autism, and etc. Now the medical board don't want to issue him a license. I've heard other things on YouTube where he approached them for a license and they wanted his clinical trials and etc. And he hadn't done any of those things, and that sort of worries me a little bit, because if I was to make a medicine, if I was that way, had that kind of intelligence and made that kind of medicine, I'd want to make sure that it works and it's not going to kill people or make people worse, and it is going to do what I say it's going to do. I don't want to just make money out of it. If my intention was to cure people, I want to. I can't just. I know then in the past, I know a lot of people poo-pooed the idea of him giving it without a license to people, but then we've got to remember there are lots of medicines that we readily take now the people who pioneered them did actually inject themselves and took the medicine themselves to test upon themselves. We know that, we've read that in biology, so that's been happening for years, and we all got to remember that clinical trials is basically that anyway. It is, first they do it on animals to make sure that it can be given to humans, but it is a risk, and we know there was a story a few years ago where there was a clinical trial where a lot of people died or were disabled after being given these drugs. So there's always a danger, because that's the only way we can ever, before we give it out to the masses, there are a few people that will have to try it, and their incentive is money. These are usually students or people who don't have a job or don't want to get a job, and this is their way of getting an income. So they do clinical trials. So in my ideal world, if I was David Noakes, I would have wanted, or maybe he did want to do this. Maybe that's why he wanted a license, was to, I guess maybe some people are suggesting he was a bit naive to sort of go to them without doing the studies first. But then if you found something that worked, I still think, if I'm being honest, if I did find something that worked, then I still would want to make sure that, I want to do everything possible so that they can't turn around and just get rid of it. I want to make, play their game, do the trials on the animals. But I guess the problem is he's not a scientist by my understanding. He got the idea from listening to Ian R. Crane's talk about it and did some research online. I want to believe that this gcmaf is a cure for these diseases, because these people who have these diseases need these cures. And yeah, I understand that in the real world, like Des was saying, that if people want to take it, it's like people want to take drugs. If they want to take it, then I guess it's their own risk. We can only ever take our own risks, isn't it? And we've lived in this world, this old world, old ways of, we must be told what we can and can't do, and someone has power over us. Well, we know all this is rubbish and lies. So if people want to believe, or people want to do whatever they want to do, well, if we believe in freedom, then what's the problem? So if they, obviously people are under the understanding that they would be taking a risk because they're not going through clinical trials and all that kind of stuff. Well, basically they are. They are the clinical trial, I guess. I guess he was conducting clinical trials really in that sense. He just didn't call it that. And as long as no one died, and well, say that, but people die of ibuprofen all the time. People die of all sorts of, because you read, I've mentioned before, if you read some of these medicines, they can kill you. They can, people die on the operating table, but some don't. So just because people die, that doesn't mean anything, because there's lots of drugs and lots of operations where people do end up dying or get brain damage or this, that and the other, because nothing is perfect. So that's not a valid argument for not having something. But my worry is that if you're serious about people, if you're serious about trying to cure people, if you have a compassion and heart and love for your fellow brothers and sisters, and someone comes along, and whether they've done it the wrong way or not, but they say that this does work, and they have evidence, in the sense that they've given it to people, and they can be tested, because those people can go to hospital, and although the NHS probably won't do scans on them like it's happening with Des, but if that was done, and then they could see, yes, look, it works. Let's not worry about, that he made mistakes about the way he did it. I'm sure Louis Pasteur didn't do everything by the book, or whoever, all these people of the past who come up with all these cures that injected themselves and tested on themselves. Well, what we're going to do, we're going to castigate him and say, oh no, we're not going to do that, and you're not going to take penicillin now because you tested it on yourself. I'm not sure if it was him who did that, but I know there was one that did. So, yeah, okay, maybe David Oakes didn't follow the proper procedure. Well, yeah, okay, whatever. He's got this thing. Let's actually test it. Let's take it seriously. Let's do a proper clinical trial of this. Because it's not also about the fact that they don't believe it worked. Their problem was he didn't have a license. He didn't, jump through the hoops, their hoops. Not all the hoops that we all agree with, and also because of sterilisation. But that can all be sorted out. Let's do, cancer research. If you're really serious about finding a cure for cancer and someone claims there is one, why aren't you doing your own research? Why are you Googling for research? Why are you waiting for someone else to do research? What are you doing with all this money? Surely it doesn't cost that much to do some clinical research on this thing, which if he's got evidence and he's done his own papers, if they are peer reviewed, well, what's the difference then? Stick them in front of them, get the people that he's taken this with. If they've been to the NHS, they must have the diagnosis that they had cancer, hopefully, and hopefully they now can do another check and they can find that they've been cured of it or it's gone away, and then, well, there you are. Let's do some research then. Let's actually properly do some research. I don't see a problem with that. My problem would be if the MHRA have been told that there is this thing and just do nothing about it, which is, I'm assuming, what's going to happen, and they just carry on ticking, stamp, oh yeah, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, that's fine, even though it has, well, I don't need to go into that, everyone knows about all about that. But if they don't, if someone, even if, you've got conflicting evidence, and you may have, I know that the BBC, when they reported it, obviously, they reported about, I think it was people who had HIV and they didn't, it didn't work for them or something. I mean, if you did a clinical trial, you may get one or two people where it doesn't work. Well, that's the same with all medicines. Not all medicines work. Some people, like take paracetamol and it doesn't stop their headache. They have to take Nurofen. I know that, just because one person gets adverse effects, some people can get Stevens-Johnson syndrome from a Nurofen tablet, but majority of people won't. It'll just be that 1 out of 10,000. You've all seen that written on the pharmaceutical leaflets that you get with all your medicines. But the BBC are putting it out there like that means, oh, well, one person died or one person it didn't work for one person, so that means it's not valid at all. If that was the case, BBC News, every single drug, every single operation that happens today also would be seen in that same light. But you won't report other things like that, like the things that are already existing. So yeah, I can see there's some fallaciousness there, which is a little bit worrying because that, why are they being fallacious like that? But then maybe that's because they just like to be sensationalists. Anyway, I think I said enough about it now. I just wish that I lived in a world where people took things seriously. Yeah, MHRA or whoever it is, they all claim that they're doing things seriously and they will come down hard on David Noakes and put him in prison. And yeah, maybe he did do it the wrong way. But if he's found a cure, irrespective of do proper research yourselves then, because you are in the position to do that. And test it and say once for all, if you did it and you were serious and you were unbiased, now that's the big problem as well, would they be truthful? If they do have money tied up in things like chemotherapy and radiotherapy and also politicians and all this money issue, and that's why I don't like money to be involved with healthcare, then maybe it's not going to come out good, because if they don't want it, they'll sink it and they'll say, no, it didn't work. So I guess it has to be independent, and no, that's impossible. Maybe if it was done by more than one. But the problem is if we can't even get one person to do clinical trials for gcmaf, so then maybe it is the only possible way is that just people are allowed to take it if they want to, like they can do with the drugs. But it'd be interesting in another 15 years if they turn around, like they've done with cannabis, where before they said, oh no, there's no benefit of that, and now people have been given it and it is helping them. If in 15 years, when you're listening to this back, and then now that gcmaf is on the NHS and it is curing people of cancer, this, that and the other, then that's another lie that you've been witness to. I just hope it isn't like that. I just hope that the people that are involved in this actually do actual unbiased, independent clinical trials and not faff about and do it quickly and release it, so that people who have these diseases, which kills, cancer, HIV, AIDS, kills, I would assume, more people than most things other than maybe car accidents, if you add them together. No, I suspect they are probably, they're at least one of the biggest killers of man. So what are you fucking about for, wasting your time? Get on with it. Take care, take it easy, God bless, in peace.